everybody. Today I'm going to be doing a video all about getting married. Yay! That sounds really sarcastic, doesn't it? But basically, I had a whole different video planned for this week, which was more complicated and needed a lot more work, and I just haven't had time with planning a wedding. And then also because I'm taking time off for the wedding, I've got a bunch of work deadlines that have all been pushed forwards. Anyway, enough with the excuses. Basically what it means is that we're doing a marriage and wedding Q&A today, and it's still relevant because it's about relationships and I talk about relationships on this channel, so there you go. Also, people are curious about each other's private business on the internet, so I'm sure you might be interested in some of the things that I'm going to talk about. So before I get to your questions, I thought I would just give a little overview of the situation. So we got engaged in August when I proposed to Dan. Did a whole video on that if you're interested in why and how I proposed to my partner. And we pretty much had everything planned, like everything was done by January, and we were giving ourselves a good old pat on the back. Planning a wedding is hard, they said. Planning a wedding is stressful, they said. And we were like, ha ha ha, we beat the system. We had a smooth ride. It was glorious. There were no like family drama politics or anything like that. We both really knew what we wanted. We both wanted to keep it quite simple and casual, and we managed to find everything that we wanted and afford it all. And so that was great. And then we were very busy congratulating ourselves on how amazing we are at wedding planning when COVID hit. Obviously, it affecting our wedding plans is not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. I just find it quite funny that we were very much like patting ourselves on the backs, just being like, aren't we great? So when the pandemic first hit and lockdown first hit and they cancelled all of their weddings, our wedding was like far away enough that we didn't really have to make any decisions. We were just like sitting back and just being like, let's just wait and see what happens. And Dan has had a very positive influence on me in his like mindset of let's just not stress about the things that we can't control. And also, right, what is the worst outcome and can we handle that? Can we cope with what the worst scenario would be? And just kind of being like, yeah, we could. And so we have just been pretty chill, to be honest, throughout it all, despite it like being frustrating. But then since they opened up doing weddings again, we have just been keeping an eye on all of the restrictions basically and making plans accordingly. So we've only really been able to start making decisions recently. I am filming this video before the wedding, so I'm also aware that anything that I say in this may not actually be true and may not actually come to fruition on the day because we just don't know. We just don't know what's going to change, and I have to accept that. I have accepted that. It's fine, she says. And just generally in how it has affected our wedding, everything is pretty much the same except smaller. So obviously we cut lots of people from the guest list, sorry, but we love you. And we're not doing a big party in the evening. Instead, we're doing the 30 people reception that is currently allowed in England at the time of filming this. So that's just the general situation of where we're at. And now I'm going to answer some of your questions, and I have split these questions up into some categories. So we have the general shit, the feminist shit, the COVID shit, the money shit, and the privacy shit. So let's dive in with the general shit. Did Dan end up proposing back as per your demands? Yes, he did, but not as per my demands. As per usual, Dan does things in his own time when he wants to and not when somebody tells him to. But you may have noticed in the last few months of videos, I'm wearing my engagement ring. This is not a ring that we bought or anything. It is an heirloom that I got from my grandmother, and it was her godmother's or something, but I've had this ring since I was 18, and I basically was like, here you go, Dan, when you're ready, this is the one. So now I've been wearing it because he proposed back to me. He proposed to me through Animal Crossing. So we both proposed to each other through games that we like. So isn't that sweet? Basically, I was just chilling out playing Animal Crossing one morning and opened up my mailbox and there was a letter from Dan with some very nice and lovely things. And then he was sat next to me on the sofa and I turned to him like, what? And then he had the ring and was like, will you marry me? There we go. Isn't that sweet? What are you most looking forward to in marriage? Great question. Having Dan take ownership of half of my debts, like the mortgage and my student loan. That would be pretty sweet. Wow, I really don't have a great answer to this. I think for me, I'm mostly just looking forward to having that partner in life. However, like, I also don't believe that you need to get married in order to have that. Dan is the one in our relationship who wanted to get married more than me. For me, I'm just like, give or take. But it was important to Dan. So this is what we do when we love people and we're in relationships. We just like have a little chat and be like, right, is this right for us? But honestly, it's hard to say what I'm looking forward to because I genuinely don't believe that anything is going to change in our relationship because we already live together. So it's just the legal status of our relationship that will change, and I'm looking forward to that. Did you consider getting a civil partnership? Yes, I think I considered it more than Dan, but the reason why we ended up going for marriage is because marriage is recognized in more countries. There are some countries that don't recognize a civil partnership, so that might run into complications if we ever travel somewhere or, you know, if we ever decide to live somewhere else. I don't know if we ever will, but it's just like keeping your options open as possible, basically. Also, because we ended up deciding to definitely go down the marriage route, I never ended up looking up whether or not heterosexual couples could get civil partnerships yet. I know that it's meant to be legal in the UK, but I just don't know if it's like come into effect yet. I don't know. Do you feel like there is a right age to get married? I mean, obviously within the confines of the law of the country that you're in, but honestly, like I'm 28 and I'm getting married soon and I feel too young, which is so ridiculous because I think I'm like maybe within the average range, maybe like at the younger end of the average range, I don't know. But I just keep on just being like, I'm too young to be getting married. Like, but I think it's because I feel a bit younger at heart, I don't know. But no, I don't think that age should necessarily play into it. People get married at all sorts of different ages. For me, what is the difference between getting married and being in a long-term / living together relationship? This is a really great question because, you know, this is going to vary from person to person. But for me, in terms of like the day-to-day experience of the relationship and how we interact with one another and like our love for each other and how we feel about each other, that doesn't change. I think for us as a couple though, for one, marriage was important to Dan, but also the legal and financial aspects of it are appealing. And we know that we want to have kids, and I think it's just generally easier in the eyes of the law. Like if one of you were to pass away and you were married, just everything then is just a lot easier financially and legally in terms of protecting your kids and protecting the one that is left behind. So it sounds really morbid, but because Dan and I know that we want to have a family together, being married just made a lot of sense. And then there are also some private reasons why we wanted to get married that I don't want to go into. Have yours and Dan's families met each other before? Half of them have. So Dan's dad and my parents have met, but Dan's mum and my parents haven't and will be meeting for the first time on the wedding day. I don't know how common this is. I have no idea. Let me know if you see this happening a lot, but I'm not sure if this is normal. And actually the only reason why my parents and Dan's dad met was in horrible circumstances because I was in hospital in Northampton. And so my parents basically came and lived in Northampton, which is where Dan's dad lives, for a month whilst I was hospitalized. And so they met under those trying times, but they're all good friends now, so that's nice. Right, we are on to the feminist shit, and a lot of these questions do overlap, so I think I'm gonna read some of them out all together and then we can just have a little chat. So feelings about getting married when modern sex positive values don't match with that, and how are you doing a non-traditional / feminist wedding, and which traditions are you keeping and ditching? All Great questions. So one of the things that I've really had to internalize about sex positivity is that sex positivity also includes vanilla people. It also includes monogamous people. Like, no matter what your relationship style and preference, like, you can be sex positive in all of these structures, including marriage. And I know that marriage has a lot of baggage, which is one of the reasons why I was like, give or take. Because of its religious background, patriarchal background, I'm just like, ugh, like, feels icky, right? But ultimately, the way that I see marriage now is that it is a legal contract, and you can project whatever you want onto marriage in terms of its bigger meaning. And for me, the whole point of sex positivity is eradicating shame, and that's shame around all of the things that we would traditionally shame, like more marginalized sexualities and behaviors, but then also not shaming people for not being kinky enough or not being polyamorous enough or whatever. So if we just eradicate all of that shame, then people can just be free to do what they want within the institutions that they want. Obviously, for me, it is important to kind of acknowledge the history of it and then just kind of reconcile that myself and just be like, and moving on, this is what it means to me. And I really love the keeping and ditching traditions question, because I have had this video in my video ideas list for so long, and it's based off Nathan Zed's videos where he does these like bring it or leave it in each year or in each decade in terms of like pop culture trends and things. And I was like, oh, I could do a wedding traditions bring it or leave it version. But I'll give you just little highlights. We are leaving a lot of things. Leaving walking down the aisle, leaving first dance, leaving vows, leaving speeches, leaving white dress, leaving, I don't know, lots of other things. But we're still bringing marriage, which is a tradition. And then I guess that kind of answers the how are we doing a non-traditional / feminist wedding. Honestly, I don't believe that there is like such a thing as like, if you tick all of these boxes, then you have a feminist wedding. The thing that I personally think is a feminist wedding is when you take a look at all of the different traditions, all of the different components of a wedding, all of the different things that you just assume happen at a wedding, and so that you might just adopt in your ceremony or in your celebration because it's just the thing that's done. Like, you can change all of it except for the like actual legal part. But taking a look at every single little one of these things and asking yourself as a couple, like, do we care about this? Is this something that we want? And if you go through each of those things and you still end up having a very traditional wedding, I would say that that is still a feminist wedding because it's intentional and you've thought about it, rather than just like it being this cookie cutter experience. You're just like, great, okay, let's just do that without questioning anything. So just questioning everything and being curious and deciding for yourself, and whether it's just like this completely different thing or a traditional thing, still feminist, in my opinion. And then somebody had a specific question. My fiance has an objection to women walking down the aisle towards the man. Any alternative options? This is not something that I've looked into, but also walking down the aisle, the idea of that makes me so uncomfortable. No, don't like it. Dan and I haven't even really discussed what we're going to do, but we're basically showing up to the registry office together. So I'm just assuming that we will just walk into the room together. That's about it. There's going to be no walking down any aisles for anybody. We just enter the room together. So there's an option for you. Other options, you both walk down the aisle. Other options, you don't have an aisle. I don't know. Good luck. How do you feel about being referred to as Mrs.? I want to be a doctor first to avoid that. Fair enough. So actually, I am not going to be a Mrs. I have been legally a Ms. since I was 17, 18. So when I was 17 and I got my first provisional driver's license, I put Ms on the form, and then every bank account I've had from then on, I've put Ms on the form. Everything ever, anything I'm doing in my business, I am Ms. And it has been that way for over 10 years. So yeah, I've not been a Miss in ages. So I'm just gonna keep it at Ms. No one will even know that I got married because my title hasn't changed, just like Mr. You can change your title at any time. Not to doctor though. Like, you need the qualifications to do that. Okay, the COVID shit. A lot of people asked, what made you decide to get married now rather than waiting until after the pandemic? Good question. Basically, we couldn't be bothered waiting. We already had everything booked and we just wanted to go ahead with it now. We don't know what our life is going to look like next year. We also don't know when this pandemic is going to be over. And we just preferred to do a smaller thing than cancel the entire thing and wait. That was just our personal decision. How have you managed to stay so positive during wedding planning in COVID? I think that goes back to what I was saying before about that whole attitude of don't stress about what you can't control, which is something that I have been learning during this pandemic. And then also being like, what is the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is we don't get married. And then we have a think about that and we go, that's fine. And then anything that happens in between what we originally planned and not getting married is fine. Will you have guests attending virtually? Yes. So our actual ceremony was originally going to be very small anyway, and then having other people attend like a party afterwards. And now that ceremony is even smaller because of the size of the room that we booked. But we are just inviting everyone to watch the ceremony. For everyone who was originally on our wedding guest list, even if they weren't originally invited to the ceremony, we're just being like, hey, come watch us get married virtually. Hopefully they allow us to do that at the registry office. I like this question. What is one thing that hasn't changed in your planning? And I think there's a few things, but the main one is my dress. I think I'm gonna have to do an entire video on my other channel, More Hannah, just about the dress. Just going through the dress, just wearing the dress, just talking about how much I love the dress. The dress. And then ideal honeymoon provided plague wasn't a thing. Yes, so our honeymoon got cancelled. We were originally meant to go to Turkey to a all-inclusive resort for a week and just like chill out, swim, eat food, drink. It was gonna be glorious. But now we are doing a 3-day mini moon in the UK. We found a little studio cottage situation thing with a hot tub. So fingers crossed that can go ahead. Now, onto the money shit. How did you deal with budgeting the wedding? Great question. I love talking about money. So, spreadsheets are the answer. Basically, I do a yearly budget for Dan and I in our joint account, and then I also do a personal yearly budget for myself. All thanks to One Big Happy Life. Their YouTube channel about personal finance is great. I got the 1-year budget plan idea from them. It is very handy. I use it slightly differently to the way that they do it. They kind of use it as quite a strict budget, whereas I use it as a rough budget plus spending tracking. Anyway, because I'd been tracking our spending for the whole of last year, I had a good idea of how much we were spending, how much we were earning, and how much we would be able to put aside each month to save for the wedding. And because we organized everything pretty quickly, we had a rough idea of how much that it was going to cost. And then we had like several months leading up to the wedding. So I was like, okay, we need to put aside this much every month in order to pay for the wedding. And then I would just like track everything in my wedding spreadsheet, whole wedding spreadsheet. There's like multiple tabs. It's amazing. On the finances page is basically just like a line for every single element of the wedding, and then like the total cost, what we've paid in terms of like a deposit or anything, and then what's left to pay. So all I'll say is spreadsheets are your friend. Really understand your own income, your own expenses, and how much you can actually save, and then use that to kind of like estimate when you might be able to get married, like when you would have like enough saved for the wedding that you want. And then someone asked, how expensive is your wedding? Figuring out how to do one cheaply is making me bald early. I'm sorry about that. I truly believe that you can do weddings really cheaply. So currently, as things stand, there are still a few things we don't know what the exact cost is going to be, but we've got estimates in for. Our wedding is costing us about $6,500, which in the grand scheme of weddings is on the cheaper side. However, because of scaling everything down due to COVID, we've actually saved $5,000. So it was going to be a lot more expensive, but because we've got less people to feed, less people to provide with alcohol, then it is a lot cheaper. But also the single most expensive thing in our wedding is my dress. And that was my personal choice. Everything in the wedding, Dan and I are splitting 50-50 except for our outfits, because that was like personal for us, like what we wanted. So I'm paying for 100% of my dress, and that is, in terms of one thing, the most expensive thing. The next thing after that is alcohol. And it was very important for Dan and I to do an open bar situation and provide all of our guests with alcohol. So there are plenty of ways for you to make your wedding even cheaper, which is make your guests buy their alcohol. I've been to weddings where it isn't an open bar. You know, that's fine. That was just a thing that Dan and I wanted. You do not have to spend a lot of money on a dress. So I definitely think that there are ways to do it cheaper, and it is always going to be cheaper the less people that you have. That is just a fact. And then finally, in the money shit, are you doing a prenup? No, we're not doing a prenup, but we are doing this thing called a deed of trust, which is specifically to do with this flat. So Dan is also going to be joining me on the mortgage, but we're putting a deed of trust in place, which basically says I own this percentage of it, Dan owns this percentage. If we were ever to break up and sell, then that is what everyone gets. And that's just because I put down a huge cash deposit on this place when I first bought it. But obviously since we moved in, Dan and I have been paying off the mortgage together, even though he doesn't legally own it, but he soon will. But that deed of trust is basically just to reflect what I put into the property at the beginning. And finally, the privacy shit. Will you be sharing pictures of the wedding, or are you keeping it private? I just want to see the dress. Do not worry, you will see the dress. I'm keeping it private until afterwards. I honestly do not have a good reason why. It's just like my gut. There's something in my gut that is just like, I don't want people to know on the day that we're getting married that that is the day I'm getting married. I would much rather like post photos afterwards, just like, hey, it happened, got married. And I don't know why, it just like, I just have this gut like, I don't know. But I do want to share all of the photos when I have the photos and when I feel comfortable sharing. Honestly, I think I'm probably just gonna wanna do it the day after, just like, blah! Like, I don't even know. We shall see. I'm just going with my gut and like what feels right in the moment. And currently, this is how I'm feeling. Have you done custom vows? If so, please share after the wedding if you're comfortable. I do love my audience with their like, only if you're comfortable thing. So I appreciate that. And actually we haven't done custom vows. And I think even if we had, I would not be comfortable sharing those. Dan and I are not a very romantic couple when it comes to like expressing our feelings for each other. Like it makes me feel uncomfortable even in a private setting that would be like just our immediate family. Like our ceremony now is so small that it's literally just our parents and our siblings that are going to be in the room with us, and they have to wear masks. We have to wear masks going into the building, but then we can take our masks off for the ceremony itself. That's a side note, but even in that room with our immediate family, the idea of being like, and these are all of the reasons why I love you. Like, I'm like, ugh. And I know some people are really good at it and it just like comes so naturally to them, but I am not one of those people. And neither is Dan. Anytime Dan tells me that he loves me and I go, why? He's just like, because you're nice. And that is the extent of what we can manage. But you know, we show our love to each other in lots of other ways, and we very much know it and feel it without having to publicly declare all of the reasons why we love each other. So there you go. Thanks for watching this video. Hope it answered some of your questions and itched some of that curiosity that you had. Were you meant to get married this year? Has your wedding been affected by the pandemic? If you are happy to share, I'd love to hear your experiences. And then maybe also you have some advice for some of the questions that people sent in, like the how to do a wedding cheaply or alternatives to walking down the aisle. If you have any of your own little tips and tricks for people, then would love to hear. And also for me. Who knows if any of this is going to be relevant when it actually comes to our wedding day. Maybe you'll all get cancelled. And, you know, just gotta accept it. Oh, accept it, Hannah. I'm fine. Thank you for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, if you would like to, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!